I don't know who you think you are, but around here, I'm the king. What I say, goes. You think you're so smart? Then dance. What? Dance, or I tell them you attacked me. You can't do this. You're taking advantage of your power. I felt a kick to my thigh, and suddenly I was being tackled to the ground. I hit my head, knocked my shoulder, and had the breath shocked out of me. Cold handcuffs were secured around my wrists, so tight that it felt like they were being crushed. Didn't you just hear me? I told you I can do whatever I want, which means I can make you do whatever I want. Now dance. He hauled me up by my elbow, and I heard my bones grinding in my wrist. I cried out in pain, but he didn't relent. The officer, who I was beginning to suspect the name of, started to hum a circus tune, and in that moment, I recognized the danger. This man had put away hundreds of men and women for drug possession while planting evidence. He'd been commemorated by the mayor. If he was going to try and tell the world that I was doing or dealing drugs, he had the authority for that. So I danced. That's right, Mikey. Dance like your criminal record depends on it. I was utterly humiliated. I felt tears in my eyes, and the police officer took joy from this. I also realized a little late that he knew my name. My name is Mike, and when I was 3, I was in an accident that left me completely blind in both eyes. Blindness is a challenge I live with daily, but it's something I've learned to move around. Some people, however, are less inclined to handle it with the grace it deserves. There's kids in my town who made my life difficult. Despite the half-hearted anti-bullying campaigns and the attempts to make the town more accessible, children found ways to make being blind harder than the initial difficulties I faced. In my first year of school, in grade 1, I sat next to a boy who would move my stuff around my desk all the time. He liked to snigger and joke and steal my lunch. The teacher always told me to turn the other cheek.
Boys like James have a hard time at home. They need compassion rather than constantly being put into situations that make them feel guilty. Do you understand?
Yes, Miss Jessica.
Good boy. Run along a play now. Don't forget to watch out for water around the water fountains. It can get very slippery.
Sure, Miss Jessica. I'll watch out for it. She spluttered in surprise, caught by her own slip-up, but I left the room. Almost immediately, as I was trying to go down the stairs, James swiped my cane and threw it away. I lost my footing and tumbled down several flights of stairs. This tormenting went on, all the way through elementary, middle, and then high school. Even in high school, the teacher still touted the same lines. I had to be considerate of James's home life. I think by the time I was 15, I was imagining that James lived in a cardboard box, ate rats for dinner, and had a vague guardian figure who beat him and left him alone all the time. When I graduated and went to university, I wasn't sure what my life would look like in 10 years down the line, but there I was, 28 years old, and working my way up through the city council. My dad had a position there as the attorney general, and now that I had my law degree, I wanted to be a standing judge. It meant years and years of hard work and breaking down barriers in the workplace. But I'd made it that far, and wasn't ready to stop working anytime soon. Everything was going well. I had my 20-year plan, and I was set on the path. And then, a police officer with a very familiar name started getting commendations. This man is the same age as you, James Stinson. Do you know him? Dad, that was the guy that tormented me at school. Oh, well, he must have turned over a new leaf. Look at all the good he's been doing recently. I looked over the man's papers and saw that he had the highest arrest rate for drug traffickers in the state. He was also getting an award for services towards the vulnerable, which almost made me choke on my coffee. When has he ever done anything for the vulnerable except make their lives hell? I was suspicious, but I was also busy. I hadn't expected our paths to cross again, because why would they? One day, maybe 6 months after I saw the news, I was out running errands and on my way to meet my grandfather when I felt someone suddenly grasp my shoulder. We were in an alley between the ice cream shop and the bank. Whatever was happening, I feared that no one was going to see us. Was I about to be mugged? I don't carry cash. I'm not trying to steal from you, sir. I asked you to stop. I didn't hear you. Please take your hands off of me. As a man of the law, I'm allowed to leave my hands on you, actually. That's definitely not true. And what do you mean, a man of the law? Are you a lawyer or a police officer? Clearly I'm an officer. What are you, blind? Well, actually, Stop resisting arrest. Arrest? I have a male, 30-something, 5'8", resisting arrest. Appears to have drug-induced confusion. I'm searching him now. I felt hands on me, and I was frozen. There are lots of things about being blind that I hate. The inconsiderateness of others, the inaccessibility of the world, and people touching me against my will. Hey, get your hands off of me! I've confiscated a weapon. He ripped the cane from my hands, and I felt like I was back at school, being tormented for the crime of being blind. Look me in the eye when I'm talking to you. I can't. You think you're being funny? I'll give you funny. Dispatch. I found drugs on the suspect. Arresting now. Send a car to Fifth Avenue. I was scared. Scared in a way I hadn't been in a long time. It felt unfair, but I knew that I hadn't had any drugs with me. I've never taken drugs a day in my life. I've never even touched drugs. I have about 1,000 people who can vouch for me, as well as drug tests, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be camera footage somewhere of you planting drugs, which means you can be tried for drug possession and bearing false witness. What are you talking about? You can't get out of drug possession that easily. Is that what you told all those other people that you had arrested? I don't know who you think you are, but around here, I'm the king. What I say, goes. You think you're so smart? Then dance. What? Dance, or I tell them you attacked me. You can't do this. You're taking advantage of your power. I felt a kick to my thigh, and suddenly I was being tackled to the ground. I hit my head, knocked my shoulder, and had the breath shocked out of me. Cold handcuffs were secured around my wrists, so tight that it felt like they were being crushed. Didn't you just hear me? I told you I can do whatever I want, which means I can make you do whatever I want. Now dance. He hauled me up by my elbow, and I heard my bones grinding in my wrist. I cried out in pain, but he didn't relent. The officer, who I was beginning to suspect the name of, started to hum a circus tune, and in that moment, I recognized the danger. This man had put away hundreds of men and women for drug possession while planting evidence. He'd been commemorated by the mayor. If he was going to try and tell the world that I was doing or dealing drugs, he had the authority for that. So I danced. That's right, Mikey. Dance like your criminal record depends on it. I was utterly humiliated. I felt tears in my eyes, and the police officer took joy from this. I also realized a little late that he knew my name. You know who I am? Who are you? It doesn't matter who I am, does it? It matters that I'm in charge, and you have to listen to me. So you best be listening. Keep dancing. How many people have you forced to do this? I don't know why you think you get to ask questions. Do you want me to add in possession of a firearm? So you're carrying drugs and firearms to plant on people? Is that what you've been doing this whole time, James? Planting things on people and getting a good arrest record? Do you have no shame? I was still dancing, still looking like an absolute idiot, and I was beginning to feel like my brain was spinning. I wanted to throw up, and I wasn't sure how much of that was the sudden unexpected exercise, or the realization that one of the best cops in the city was corrupt. You'll never get away with this. Watch me.
Don't worry, sir. People will be.
I stopped dancing, my limbs filling with an ache I couldn't describe, and I turned to the sound of the person's voice. It's a crime to record a police officer against his will.
I wasn't recording, sir. I was live streaming you harassing a blind man and threatening to plant weapons on him.
No, you have to stop filming right now.
Sorry, no can do, sir. There are already 2 million live watchers, and if I record for another 2 minutes, I'll be making bank. And you're making history.
I was overjoyed that the man was getting his comeuppance, but the strain of the whole situation had me feeling progressively worse. And then suddenly, I was losing consciousness.
You made that man pass out.
Put down the phone or I'll shoot. Just as I drifted completely, I heard a gunshot, and then I was unconscious and unaware anymore. Later, when I woke up, I recognized I was in the hospital. I heard the beeping, felt the rough blankets under my fingers, and I could smell the anti-skeptic. Hello? Ah, son, I'm so glad you're awake. Dad? What happened? It turns out that your old bully didn't learn his lesson at all. He just expanded business. The doctors cleared me to leave, but I had to take pain medication and my leg was wrapped up in a bandage. I went on social media and saw that the video of James planting drugs on me and harassing me was wildly viral. The internet was going off the rails with calls for punishment. I talked to my dad and went to go see James in the city jail that evening. I was still bruised and sore, but that just fueled my anger. James, I always knew you'd end up behind bars. Get lost, man. Make me. All through school, I was a passive victim. I talked to teachers, I lost lunch times and break time to the library to avoid the assault. I had no birthday parties to attend, or people to share snacks with, or games to win or lose. And James was the main cause of it. Worst of all, after all that, I found out that James's dad had a respectable job at a bank, and they lived in a house on the hill with a pool and 2 cars. He was doted on as a boy. His evil disposition wasn't because of difficulties at home. It was just a natural behavior for him. What you don't realize, James, is that it's me you now have to listen to. Now, I am in charge. You see, my dad gets to choose where you go. There are currently over 100 people in a very particular prison that you put there by planting evidence. They'll be released soon, but not before there's a teensy bit of overlap between your stays. I sure hope nothing bad happens to you. No, you can't. I promise you, I can. Please, I'll do anything. Dance. James danced and danced, and even though I couldn't see him, I could hear him panting and crying and panicking. I laughed and walked away, letting the other police officers in, the people he'd made an enemy of, and they watched, clapped and filmed him. He burned with humiliation, tears streaming down his face, and I told him I'd see him in court. The next week, I sat in the court and listened as my dad read the guilty verdict and sentenced James to almost life in prison. You've destroyed so many lives, and so it's fair that your own is destroyed too. You'll be sentenced to 20 years in max prison with no change of parole. And when you are released, you will do 5 years of unpaid work in a school for the blind to repay the damage you have done to my son, to the community, and to disabled people all over the world. A week later, I heard from one of the prisoners at Max Prison who had been released after they were cleared of all charges. We made him dance. He is now the only person in the prison who does laundry duty, so he is in the basement, morning to night, cleaning everyone's clothes and bedding, because there's nowhere for them to put him that's safe. He's the most hated man in prison right now, and he's competing with some pretty mean prison guards. When I went to visit the prison a few months later to check on things, the warden told me that James was completely isolated. When the other prisoners finished eating, James would eat on his own, and then he would have to scrub the whole floor. He'd then go back to the laundry room and keep doing the washing until he went to bed. He's never around other people now. He's the target of relentless bullying. After all those years at school, I couldn't think of anyone better suited to this punishment. And considering all the lives he'd managed to ruin by having people needlessly arrested and imprisoned, I knew I wasn't the only one. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. It didn't take long for them to notice. One day, they stormed into my office, causing a scene.
You ungrateful brat. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? How dare you cut us off?
That old hag poisoned your mind, huh? You're our son, and we deserve our share. She's dead now. You can just sell everything off. We'll share the money equally and never see each other again. You're both so pathetic. Even if Grandma hadn't given me this instruction, I swear, I'd have still cut you both off. You deserve nothing from me. They cursed me, insulted me, and threatened me, but I refused to dance to their tunes. They had drained Grandma while she was alive. They wouldn't take a single cent from me now that she was gone. For 2 weeks straight, my parents harassed me. They showed up at my office, at my house, even at restaurants where I had meetings. Always screaming and demanding and threatening. And when they realized their tantrums weren't working, they took the next step. They sued me. I wasn't even surprised. The court summons arrived on my desk, stating that they were taking legal action against me for denying them their rightful inheritance. My parents were the definition of privilege, not the kind that came from hard work, but the kind that clung like parasites to someone else's success. My dad's mother, my grandmother, was a wealthy businesswoman. She owned properties, had stocks in major companies, and still, even in her old age, made smart investments. But instead of following in her footsteps, my parents saw her wealth as their personal bank account. My dad didn't work, neither did my mom. They didn't need to, not when Grandma was there to fund their every whim. Dad often proposed business ideas to Grandma, and whenever she sent him money, he and Mom would just lavish it on themselves. One week, they were in Paris, drinking champagne under the Eiffel Tower. The next, they were on some island, lounging on yachts and snapping pictures for their friends. They didn't care about anything but their own pleasure. My grandma once fell ill for an entire month and was on oxygen, but my dad refused to visit or take care of her. She hired nurses, but they would often only reach out when it concerned money. They were toxic and cruel to her, and I hated it. And then there was me. Left behind, as always. They never brought me along, never even called while they were away. But I wasn't completely alone. At least, not at first. We had nannies, a rotating door of different women, each staying just long enough to realize how impossible my parents were before quitting. My parents treated them like servants, barking orders, belittling them, and always forgetting to pay them on time. When I was 5, I had a nanny named Elise. She was kind. She read to me at night and taught me how to tie my shoes. She stayed longer than most, nearly a year. But one day, she packed her bags and left. She hadn't been paid in 4 months. I cried when she left. She was the closest thing to a mother I had ever known. Then came Carla. She lasted 6 months before storming out, cursing in Spanish because my parents had forgotten to pay her too. By the time I turned 8, all the nannies had left. No one wanted to work for my parents anymore. And so, I was alone. At 8 years old, I learned how to take care of myself. I woke up alone. I dressed myself. I made my own breakfast, usually just dry cereal because the fridge was always empty. Mom and Dad weren't home most of the time. When they were either asleep from another drunken night out or too busy fighting over something ridiculous to notice me. I stopped expecting them to remember little things like my birthday, or parent-teacher meetings, or the fact that a child needed love and attention. The only person who ever cared was Grandma. Whenever she visited, she saw the truth. She saw how I was always in the same old clothes, how I had to heat up frozen meals for dinner, how my parents barely acknowledged my existence. Grandma often brought me dresses and all sorts of gifts, but my parents would seize them, sell them, and spend the money. I just couldn't understand why they hated me. Sometimes, I even wondered if I was adopted, or worse. When Grandma noticed how I looked during her visits, she started sneaking money into my room, stuffing cash into my pillowcase so I could at least buy food when my parents weren't around. She paid for my school supplies, sent housekeepers to clean up the mess my parents made, and even threatened to cut them off if they didn't take care of me properly. Of course, they always lied. They promised to be better, swore they'd change. And Grandma, for all her sharp instincts in business, still wanted to believe her son wasn't a lost cause. But I knew better. And deep down, so did she. I don't remember exactly when I started feeling anxious all the time, but by the time I turned 10, it had become unbearable. I was constantly on edge, jumping at every loud sound, overthinking every little thing. I had trouble sleeping, and even when I did, I'd wake up with my heart racing for no reason. Grandma noticed. She always noticed whatever concerned me. One evening, she showed up at the house unannounced. She took one look at me and saw how thin I had gotten, the dark circles under my eyes, the way my hands trembled when I spoke. Then, she made a decision.
You're coming home with me.
I didn't argue. I don't think I even had the energy to argue. My mom and dad barely reacted when she told them. My mom simply nodded, barely looking up from her phone. My dad grumbled something about letting the old bat have her way. That was it. No argument. No resistance. They let me go without a second thought, as if I'd been nothing but a bother to them. And that night, after I left with Grandma, I slept peacefully for the first time in a long time. Living with Grandma was like stepping into another world. A world where I didn't have to fend for myself, where food was always in the fridge, and someone actually asked about my day. She enrolled me in therapy immediately. I didn't want to go at first because I didn't even understand why I felt the way I did, but she insisted.
You've been through too much alone, sweetheart. You don't have to do it alone anymore.
Therapy helped. It gave me words for what I was feeling, which was anxiety, neglect, and abandonment. It helped me realize that none of it was my fault. Grandma made sure I had everything I needed. Clothes that fit, a warm bed, a good school with teachers who actually cared. She even attended my school events, sitting in the front row, clapping the loudest, making me feel like I mattered. And my parents? They never checked on me. not once. At first it hurt. I used to wonder if they'd call, if they'd visit, if they'd suddenly realize they missed me. But they didn't. The only time I ever saw them was on social media, flaunting their extravagant lives. New vacations, new designer clothes, new luxury cars. Never once did they mention me. Eventually, I stopped expecting them to. By the time I finished high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like Grandma. I didn't just want to live off her wealth, I wanted to help her manage it. I wanted to prove to her that she had made the right choice by taking me in. When I told her I wanted to go to business school, she teared up.
I'm so proud of you, Andrew.
I poured everything I had into business school. While others partied, I studied. While some skipped lectures, I sat in the front row, absorbing every lesson. I knew what I wanted was to make Grandma proud. And I did. I graduated with distinctions, standing among the best in my class. Grandma was overjoyed. She cried when I received my final results, holding my face between her hands and kissing my forehead.
I knew you'd do it. You've always been meant for greatness.
After graduation, job offers flooded in. Prestigious firms, international companies, high-paying positions. They all wanted me. But I turned them all down. My place was with my grandma. The first year of managing the company was intense. I worked tirelessly, and the results were astounding. My grandma was so proud and impressed that she stepped down and left everything in my authority 1 year later. I ensured Grandma had everything she wanted. Anything she desired was hers. She had taken care of me when I had no one. Now, it was my turn to take care of her. But life is cruel. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to meet my grandma sitting on her favorite chair. She wasn't breathing anymore. I wept like a child. No amount of wealth or success could bring her back. The pain was unbearable, but I knew she would have wanted to be honored with a burial as dignified as the life she had lived. And I made sure of it. Her funeral was grand, filled with people whose lives she had touched. Employees, friends, business partners. But my parents? I refused to let them attend. They hadn't cared when she was alive. They had no right to mourn her in death. That was when the real problems started. After the mourning period ended, I did what Grandma had asked me to do. I cut my parents off completely. No more money. No more gifts. No more lifeline. They weren't entitled to anything. It didn't take long for them to notice. One day, they stormed into my office, causing a scene.
You ungrateful brat. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? How dare you cut us off?
That old hag poisoned your mind, huh? You're our son, and we deserve our share. She's dead now. You can just sell everything off. We'll share the money equally and never see each other again. You're both so pathetic. Even if Grandma hadn't given me this instruction, I swear, I'd have still cut you both off. You deserve nothing from me. They cursed me, insulted me, and threatened me, but I refused to dance to their tunes. They had drained Grandma while she was alive. They wouldn't take a single cent from me now that she was gone. For 2 weeks straight, my parents harassed me. They showed up at my office, at my house, even at restaurants where I had meetings. Always screaming and demanding and threatening. And when they realized their tantrums weren't working, they took the next step. They sued me. I wasn't even surprised. The court summons arrived on my desk, stating that they were taking legal action against me for denying them their rightful inheritance. I laughed at their foolishness. How could they even think they could win against me? The day of the hearing arrived. My parents walked into the courtroom with so much pride and confidence. They stood before the judge, boldly presenting their so-called evidence, which was a will they claimed my grandmother had left behind, proving they were entitled to her fortune. Their first disgrace came immediately. The judge examined the document and within minutes determined it was a forgery. My parents' faces paled. They'd just committed a crime while trying to cheat. That was when I decided to end them completely. I submitted my own evidence. I'd hidden it since Grandma died. It was a legally recognized written will. She'd told her lawyer to only give it to me after she died. And then, to remove all doubts, I submitted a video recording of my grandmother, also given to me by the lawyer. In the video, Grandma repeated everything in her written will.
I declare that everything I own belongs to my grandson Andrew. My son and his wife will receive nothing.
The moment the video ended, I turned to my parents. Their smugness was gone and replaced by panic. They knew they had lost. The judge, looking at me, asked if I wished to grant them anything out of goodwill. I didn't hesitate to refuse. In fact, I want everything they own returned to me. The house, the cars, the money, everything. The judge approved it immediately, and my parents were sent to jail for 6 months for forging the document. I took the house, gave out the cars to those who needed them, and took out every single penny in their accounts, ensuring they'd have nothing to return to when they're out of jail. After that, I opened a charity foundation in my grandmother's name, using my parents' former house as the headquarters. A week after they were released from their 6-month jail term, they showed up at one of my houses. They were homeless, wearing mismatched outfits, looking so malnourished. They begged me for a place to stay.
The streets are too cold, Andrew. We'll die out there.
I pretended to think about it. I told them to wait. Then I went inside, grabbed a bucket of ice water and dumped it over their heads. They ran away, shivering and screaming and cursing. I laughed so much. A few days later, they returned. This time, they weren't asking for shelter, just water and food because they were starving. So, I obliged and handed them expired dog food.
Dog food? How can you be so cruel? You give your starving parents expired dog food?
You're the most evil person on earth. I laughed at them before I unleashed the dogs. They ran again, screaming at the top of their lungs. That was the last time they dared to approach me. After a few months, I called my parents and told them I had forgiven them and would help them financially, on one condition. They had to go on live television and confess how they had treated me. Of course, they were desperate and agreed. They went on live TV and confessed everything. The media turned against them, showering them with insults and outrage. The next day they contacted me, expecting the financial help I had promised. But when I answered the phone, I just laughed and said, "Do you have any paperwork or contract proving what we agreed on?" When they hesitated and said no, I simply replied, "Then I didn't promise you a dime." To worsen their situation, I contacted them anonymously, claiming they had won some money and needed to sign paperwork in Mexico. Since my dad loved money but hated working, he often played the lottery online, so he and my mom easily fell for it. They foolishly believed me, and I even booked them a one-way ticket there. When they landed, I stopped answering their emails and calls, leaving them stranded. Since they love vacations, I gave them one for free. I then filed a restraining order, just to ensure they never came near me again. They never did, because they were far away. Thanks for watching.